I call the honourable member Kevin Haig.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. It's my pleasure to take a call on this bill and to begin in the traditional way by thanking the officials who worked with the Health Select Committee on this bill. The arcane nature of some of the material in the bill, I think, meant that officials had to work particularly hard on this one, and their work was appreciated. Also to thank my fellow members of the Health Select Committee. It's a committee, sir, that works very well together under Paul Hutchison's chairmanship and did a great job on this bill. We actually made some substantive changes. And so also to thank, of course, the submitters. It was, I think, difficult for submitters to get to grips with the nature of the bill, because while some consultation had been undertaken some years previously with a limited set of stakeholders, many submitters were coming to the bill for the first time because of the inadequacy of that earlier consultation process. And the submissions we received were, I think, uniformly well thought through and appreciated. It's a long time ago, Mr Speaker, that we were considering this bill. The Health Select Committee was considering submissions on this bill about a year ago. And one has to wonder, I think, picking up on Marion Street's point, that this is an interim measure. Why on earth it would take a year for this bill to come back to the House? If the measures were needed for the interim, surely they were needed a year ago. And there seems no reason at all why it could not have been progressed at that time. Maurice Williamson has covered some of the detail of the bill, and I pick up on Paul Hutchison's perhaps backhanded compliment to Maurice Williamson, describing it as Gilbert and Sullivanian, perhaps. You know, he read all the speeches with a voice so clear that I'm not sure what the second line would be, but maybe he's deserving of a promotion within the cabinet. The revised definitions, sir, I think were welcomed by all. I just note the need that will arise to align the definitions of medicines in other acts with the one that is incorporated by this bill into the Medicines Act. The principal change made by this bill, sir, is to extend and elaborate the framework for prescribing rights, reflecting, sir, the creaky nature of the existing framework for prescribing. And I think there was generally support for the extension of authorised prescribers, and so I note in particular the change made to nurse practitioners, which I think is very broadly welcomed across the country. Designated providers. This is the changes made to this category are important for the flexibility of our prescribing framework, and I'll come to that in a little more detail in a moment. And then delegated prescribers, and as Maurice Williamson has set out, this was not altogether uncontroversial, and Ian Lees-Galloway's also spoken about that. I think, sir, we are cautiously of a mind still to accept this extension into delegated prescribing. And I say cautiously because to our way of thinking, this category of prescribers still does not sit easily with the Health Practitioners Competency Assurance Act. And that, I think, is one of the matters that, as we move to the permanent resolution of these issues in the Medicines Act, as opposed to the interim one, that will need to be addressed by government. Probably a government that is less supine about the need for regulatory reform in the area of health. The category of temporary prescribers, as Maurice Williamson has said, it was good that the Select Committee recognised that further category was not needed and has been scrapped in the bill. So the the point of our regulatory regime around medicines has got to be threefold. It's got to be ensuring timely access to medicines, and the changes that we're making in this bill to the categories of prescribers adds to our ability to provide New Zealanders with timely access to medicines, and that's a good thing. Secondly, sir, the regime must provide for the safety of New Zealanders, and that I think is clearly what was at the heart of some of the concerns expressed by doctors about extending prescribing rights to other categories of health professionals. And I am satisfied, sir, that the provision exists for us to ensure safe prescribing of medicines, and the onus now falls on the Director-General and the Minister to ensure that that's carried forward. And the third purpose, sir, is one that's not normally articulated, but which I think is very important in the light of this bill, and that's to ensure that we make the best possible use of the health workforce that we have. And this bill certainly makes a contribution in that regard. It's very important, sir, for reasons that I outlined in my first reading speech, and Ian Lees-Galloway again has spoken about, and that is the growing need for health services, a growing population, an ageing population, a population with more complex health needs. All says our health system needs to do more and more, and against that backdrop we have a government that has chosen to reduce health services funding in real terms, and within that sinking lid for health funding to prioritise some particular areas that are of short-term importance and optical value for political gain at the expense of everything else. And I think everyone in this House ought to be sobered by the research that was published just a couple of weeks ago from the University of Otago, showing actually that 1 in 4 New Zealanders over the age of 15 either has type 2 diabetes or has pre-diabetes. That is a rate much higher than was previously thought, and it is indicative of the kind of load that our health services are going to need to shoulder. Against that backdrop, sir, we have a minister who comes to the House week after week making a smug claim about 1,000 extra doctors in response to questions about senior doctors, about our specialist workforce. And we know, sir, that what he is doing is conflating certainly some extra senior doctors, fewer than are needed to maintain parity against the growing health need, in fact, along with junior doctors and a bunch of other people. That's what he's doing. He's conflating categories to provide for a politically useful answer. And so I think we also need to start drawing attention to the contribution of Health Workforce New Zealand, one of the Minister's initiatives that is still producing a program that is hopelessly poorly geared to the need that we actually have for serious workforce development in the health sector. Its program, sir, is chaotic, haphazard, and clearly inadequate for the need. So when we look to the extremely slow progress of this interim bill, it is emblematic, Mr. Speaker, of this government's approach to health, that in stark contrast to the growing, extremely serious need for a comprehensive overhaul of our regulatory regime and of our systems to enable this nation to cope with that tsunami of health need, this government is choosing instead to work slowly, to make cosmetic changes that are in its political short-term interests, rather than grappling with the serious long-term challenges that New Zealand faces. We have a health minister, sir, that is clearly not up up to the task.
I call the honourable member Barbara Stewart.